Hi, welcome back. My name is Mark Knutson again, application engineer for Keysight Technologies, focusing on PathWave SystemVue design software, and we're in the second of 5 videos here focusing on baseband link control of SystemVue from Matlab. Last time in video 1, we walked through one of the shipping examples that generated a 16 QAM signal in Matlab, put it through a RF chain, RF model in SystemVue, and took the output and sent it back to Matlab, and brought all the data together and did the analysis. Now we're going to look at what happens if you get some errors and how to troubleshoot those and how to understand what's going on and make sure you have everything set up the way it needs to be to get the expected results. So we're going to look at this example. This Knowledge Center document has an example set that goes with it. You can download everything I'm going to show you here. But what we're going to do is we're going to look at 3 different errors. We're going to look at, they all have SystemVue Mex kind of attached onto it. Unfortunately, it's not Mexican food. I love Mexican food, but it's more of a general catch-all error in SystemVue. And we're going to take a look at 3 different types of those SystemVue Mex errors. The first one will say analysis failed to run, just dead stop, and then it'll say you better check the error log and figure out what's going on. And we're going to look at some of these different functions to see how we can use those to help you identify the problem. The second error is called it just has to do with the TCP server. So that's the communication dialog between Matlab through to SystemVue engine that runs SystemVue through a kind of a blind process, because you can have Matlab on Linux or Windows or wherever it is, and it's going to run SystemVue remotely over a process called SystemVue engine. It talks to it through the TCP link, and if there's a problem there, we're going to understand what's going on there and how to solve that. And then the third error is just a deadlock error, or there's some difference in the timing of trying to get data in from a sink and to source data from a source and sync data back in from a sink. There's some timing issue or a deadlock issue. We're going to look at that. So first up, before we do that, what is expected behavior of a baseband link example? We looked at this in video 1, but let's just do a quick run through again to make sure we're clear on that. So when you run like the video 1 example, the MK3 RF impairment 16 QAM, when you run that from SystemVue, it should establish a connection, and it should TCP connection, and before you do that, I should say, you have to make sure you go into Matlab and go into the Home tab, Set Path, Add Folder, and make sure you have C:\program files, Keysight, SystemVue 2021, or whatever your installation directory is, and baseband link. If you have that added to your path, you should be good to go. And then once you run an example like the 16 QAM example that we did in the first video, it'll establish a TCP connection through SystemVue engine from Matlab, and just run as expected. Give you the expected output. So let's basically show that first error. So the first error is failed to run. Let's show what that looks like. So let me bring up one I called MK3 RF amp trouble. Anything that has trouble in it. That used to be my middle name, but anyway, my mom's not here, so we'll just, I called it trouble. And trouble for a reason, because it was set up to fail. So in this design is set up to fail for 2 reasons. I'll show you where I set it up to fail, and then we'll run it and see what happens. So first off, the RF link, this one has an RF link, so it has a cache that you need to manage and run from Matlab. SystemVue needs to manage, has a behavioral copy of what the model is going to behave like in the cache. And right now it's just cleared. There's nothing in it. So that's a problem. You need to basically change this to 1 sorry, you need to put some sort, run this model again and not have an empty cache. That's the first one. And then save it. That's the first problem. The second problem is on the parameter that we passed in for the RF carrier, it's 110 megahertz. Well, that sounds good, but the problem is it needs to match what I have in SystemVue, in Matlab. So if I go to Matlab and I go to the corresponding trouble, you notice instead of 110 megahertz, I have an F carrier of 100 megahertz. So that's a problem. This is trying to change in the RF link. Instead of, first of all, it's empty. Second of all, if I reset it at 110 megahertz and not 100, that's a problem, that the model's going to be off. So let's see what happens in Matlab when you run that. So if I go to the trouble example, so if you want to click, you can type CLC in Matlab, and that'll clear out the command window. If you type clear, that will empty out any of the workspace variables. Now what happens when I run the trouble example? Designed to fail. Oh, as expected, it fails. So it gets to a point, and then it says basically, yep, gives me the SystemVue MEX error, the generic catch-all error, and then it says you need to go dig into the error log and figure it out. So let's go here. What you can do is you can type SystemVue config Getversion. That's the first thing. So let me do that. So I can copy this, SystemVue Getversion, in my Matlab command prompt window. And that's, you can do that to just say, okay, I am running the expected version. I have SystemVue 2021 installed, so that's the version that it's talking to. All right, that's a good sign. The other thing I can do is I can type get. I need to type the get error log. So that actually is pasted into the error message. So if I go here, I can just cut and paste. And if I look at this, it goes into the error log that results from that first run of the trouble example that we knew was going to fail. And it says the behavioral data may not have been generated, which is true. It was an empty cache in the RF link. So you need to regenerate it. So if I go over to the no trouble workspace, so I'll do this, CLC, clear. If I go over to the no trouble, let me run that. Establishes a TCP connection. And while that's running real quick, let's go to that corresponding workspace and go to 16 QAM. This is in the no trouble workspace. So what did I do here? This time I did what I was supposed to. It has a full cache that was generated. The way I fill that cache is I put this on 0, run from MATLAB 0, so that it's using this instead of this, just some sort of base source in SystemVue. I run that simulation, I get the cache full, and then I save it, save the workspace. That's important, and it has the right F carrier, 110 megahertz, that matches what I have in MATLAB, 110 megahertz into the no trouble version. So that ran no problem, filled up the data, generated the plots that I expect, as we described in the first video. All right, so let's take a look at the other two errors that we can get. All right, so actually before we move off of the first one, that's basically, again, the first error has to do with failed to run and the generic SystemVue MEX error. We figured out by typing SystemVue config get error log that basically our cache was empty. And so if you had a cache, but it was just the wrong sampling rate, carrier frequency in the RF link, or it was an out-of-date cache. It could say something like dataset version 4, but expected version 1. So that's another form of that error. We also checked the version, and that was right. If nothing came back, or it was a non-expected version of SystemVue, that would have been a problem. We would have had to address that. And the error log will give you things like it'll say RF link, and it'll tie to the instance name of the RF link, and it'll say things like, oh, the version's out of date, so you have to go. It will help you figure out where to go troubleshoot that. So you have to clear the cache, and we went through all that. The second error message is also flagged under SystemVue MEX. Again, just a general catch-all error, and it'll say error reading from TCP server, forcibly closed, TCP connection failed. Remember, TCP is the connection mechanism to connect Matlab to the SystemVue engine, and that's running SystemVue kind of behind the scenes from Matlab. If it can't connect, that's a big problem. So probably the best thing you can do is type systemvue config.close into your Matlab command prompt. Just type systemvue connect close, and once you do that, it'll basically close any running. You can't have more than one. That can happen, but on a rare occasion, and that was typically what causes this TCP error. There's more than one running, or something's problem. So it's good to just send a close command and kill it, and then rerun it again, and you're probably going to be fine. The last example is troubleshooting error 3 is a deadlock error, or basically waiting for an access or some sort of timing issue between stuff sent from Matlab to SystemVue in the source, or stuff coming back from the sink to Matlab, and it'll flag it as a deadlock detected, or just some issue with timing between the sink and the source. And so it could look like this. And the best way to solve this is go on this link in the support documentation. So you either need to, it's in the documentation. It talks about block transfer of data. If you know precisely how many blocks of data that you're going to transfer, then you can do so. And so that's, when you do a precise number of block transfers, you know exactly, like in this case, the 16 QAM signal X that we generated in Matlab, we know exactly start index, stop index, how much we're going to transfer, and then we're going to play it back from the output of the simulation from SystemVue fed back into Matlab, and we're going to capture a precise amount. That is kind of block transfer, and if you write a for loop or something like that, you know exactly start to stop what you're sending into the source and then bringing back in the sink. You have to know that exactly. Otherwise, if it's more complicated, you have more than one source, more than one sink, maybe different data rates, you can get into scheduling and polling. And I would recommend that you look at this part of the documentation. You can use commands like wait for ready, set the, put it in wait for ready, is it ready, and then set the data. And if it's ready, if the sync's ready, get the data. And so there's some advanced functions like polling functions that you can use to handle that. There is an example that we're going to cover in the last video, and the last example, and I will give you just a quick preview of it. But in example 3, there is 100 samples that we capture, we set data on, and it's because there is a 100 downsampler in that example. And if you go to that example and you basically, it's set up 100 as expected. If you just change it to 2000, it comes up with like this set failed, the sync set data couldn't, has not been started or stopped. It's very similar to the deadlock error. And we go through in this example to understand why 2000 doesn't work, and how to even if you didn't know it was due to that downsampler that it has to be 100, how to figure that out. So that that's some examples to troubleshoot those 3 different types of errors that you can encounter when using Baseband Link from Matlab. And hopefully that was helpful to you. Error type 1, 2, and 3. And you can get a lot of information from using these commands, like checking the error log, closing the process, making sure you're using the version. We didn't really cover this, but you can try this also. You can actually force where the SystemVue engine path is if it's not correct, and you can check the version you're using. So these are all some good troubleshooting tools to resolve these errors that you could encounter on a rare occasion. Otherwise, hopefully you feel empowered to use Baseband Link, and check out the first video to get the basics. And then if you do encounter errors with Baseband Link from Matlab, hopefully this gives you help. Otherwise, contact your local Keysight team and we'd be happy to help you out. Thanks. Bye.